Hi, I'm Elliot Manning and welcome back to another episode of The Search. This week I'm joined by Stuart, who works for Stott and May out in Los Angeles. Stuart is a head of cyber security for the business with many years experience in the recruitment game, who's going to share his story with us today. But I'll let you introduce yourself, mate.
Yeah, Elliot, thanks for having me on. Like Elliot said, Stuart Mitchell, running the security practice for the United States over at Stott and May. Working in the US for close to 7 years now across a couple of businesses, and yeah, definitely got a few stories to share along the way.
Lovely. How's it going over there at the moment?
You know what? So I think it's pretty good. One thing that I'm in a fortunate situation, when I look around and I've got friends who recruit in all sorts of industries, aside for the fact that I'm mostly stuck in my apartment, the security industry really hasn't seen as big of an impact from a recruiting standpoint. So, fortunately, I had a quarter where we were pretty much in line with what our annual expectations were pre-COVID. Probably had to work a bit harder and scramble to get there, but that's always part of the fun. Things could be worse, and matter of the fact is we're in a position where the quarter we've had is allowing us to grow as a business, which I can say we're in a fortunate position, because I know that's not the case for everybody at the minute.
No, fantastic, mate. Good for you. Well, that's, obviously you worry about yourself, and obviously where you're going with everything, I suppose, is important as it is at the minute. But tell me, Stuart, so, your background in recruitment, 7 years out in the US, but you've been in recruitment since, 2009, I think it is?
It's a long time.
Long enough.
Start with a full head of hair, yeah.
You're not fed up yet?
No, I'm not. You know what? So it's been a journey. So I started in Northampton, of all places.
Wow.
Not the London area like most of the good recruiters who do make it out here, but started doing really low level recruitment, almost like anything at like 10% in Northampton. Did that for a couple of years, and to be honest, I nearly walked away. I was like, this is pretty crap. I'm not making that much money. I think there's plenty of people who, I guess from my generation of recruiters, who are like, we call it chasing 30, which is, 30,000 sounds like a lot of money. And so almost walked away, and then decided to get in my next suit and start taking some interviews in London. I was like, look, there's not a lot going on here. I'm going to chance my arm and start looking around. So, joined a business in London in 2011 called Portland Resourcing, SAP Recruitment. I think probably just past the boom days, but I think everyone. So everyone I feel like has had some exposure to SAP in kind of the late 2000s or the start of this decade. So that's when I really started to kind of get what UK recruitment was like. Really diving into the real sort of sales mentality, $100 a day type, smash the phones. And, looking back, it was really fun. At the time, scrambling for money, making nothing like where you're at these days, but, having cereal for lunch from the office, and, losing all your comms on credit card roulette on a Thursday night. But, look back and it was awesome. And look, I got headhunted to my next gig. I feel like there's always companies that create good recruiters, and I feel like Portland was that. And so I, really did a good job of helping me grow, and got an offer. And when someone throws 10K on your base when you're at that lower end, and in a newer market, jumped at the opportunity, as well as Elliot Brown was the business I joined initially in the UK to focus on Germany, where a lot of my success had started. Did that for just under a year. And at that point, they kind of got rid of their UK entity, and they were like, we want to keep you in the business. Do you want to move to Germany, or do you want to move to New York? Which pretty much a no-brainer for me. The US was an attractive proposition. I actually had distant family in New York who helped me set up as well. So yeah, just jumped in and took the risk. And, you know, since then, I guess it's been nearly 7 years, but was brought into Elliott Brown when there was, you know, I was the third billing person, fourth person in that New York office, to help build out their contract division, which, Elliot, I'm sure you know, is a very different proposition in the US, and I feel like a tougher thing to replicate compared to how the UK model works from a contractor perspective. So definitely had a lot to learn there.
Just on that, Stuart.
Go on.
Just for anyone listening, like, you know, the difference of working in the market, what would you say is the difference of doing what you did in London to then having to see it all differently out in the States? Because I know that it is different.
So I think the first thing, particularly if you're doing contractor stuff, is you got to spend some time understanding the compliance side of things. You know, there's different ways to payroll people, different rules, different states, different taxes, and not as straightforward as this is your day rate, this is your bill rate, let's do it. You know, there's W-2 factors, there's insurance factors. There's certain things that different businesses ask for that I was completely naive to, and you know, and like so many businesses that come from the UK do, no one have really done their homework. So, you know, we got ourselves into a couple of spots that we had to spin ourselves out of. The second thing is, you know, from a competition standpoint, you're always kind of playing against the services. So where I actually had my most success as a contract biller, which I was for a while before I pivoted, was actually supporting consultancies and supporting, you know, both vendors, etc. And that's where I've seen businesses, you know, who are supplementing their workforces, you know, the onshore, offshore type companies. That's where I had my most success, was really supporting those businesses. Whereas, you know, in the UK, it's like, hey, let's go cut, you know, let's go and try and beat Deloitte. Let's go and try and beat PwC. Let's go and try and kick Cognizant out and get 20 runners in there on a big project. It's very difficult to do. And the sell is kind of, it's very new to the US entities that, you know, I've had a couple of wins where it has happened. But I don't hear about, you know, a person who has 30, 40 runners at a, you know, a medium-sized bank on an SAP project or a Dynamics project. I think it's, you know, if you're working with an end user, it's a spot deal here or there. But mostly where I think that the business is on the consultancy side and supporting those vendors.
Yeah, fine. So you're going through your move as you know, from Elliott Brown and that sort of story.
Yeah. So I had a ton of fun at Elliott Brown. You know, I was young, like single, stupid, starting to make more money than I thought was possible. You know, when you first get into recruitment. So I had some good success. I think my best year at Elliott Brown, I did just shy of 700K, which, you know, when you don't have a ton of responsibility is a good amount of billing. So made a decent amount of money. One of the things that I saw, and, you know, we did try and replicate that grad model of, you know, cool, let's get a ton of people out of college, and we'll just create our brand and kind of create some, you know, we don't want American bad habits. We're going to create these people from scratch. Probably churned through more people than we could have. I think you have to have a really solid template to do that. Some businesses do it really well, both here in LA and in New York. I am aware of that, but I think, you know, what's important is that you have a really solid foundation of people that are bringing money into the business before you do that. We had 2 or 3 really good billers, and then at points 18, 20 grads, pulling time off the billers. And so we learned from that, but at a time we're probably feeding 25 mouths with 4 or 5 contributors. And I think that was a really big learning experience for us. But, you know, that said, we had an exceptional culture. We had a ton of fun, really kind of, I hate to use the cliche, the work hard, play hard, good happy hours, you know, good incentives, type of thing.
How did you feel at this point?
Like,
you've gone out to the States, you've built 700K as an individual contributor, and then all of a sudden you're now part of this massive sort of, growth period where there's loads of people that are looking up to you as a top biller. How do you manage, your day? I mean, did you not get worried that your billings were going to drop and you were going to get sidetracked, or?
So long and the short of it is that happened to me the year before I left. First of all, like that year when I was billing, like it was one of those, everything I touched turned to gold. It's like a striker who just can't stop scoring. And everyone's looking at you. That was probably the only time I really had that like big billeritis that people get. So, I had a couple of home truths from CEO and COO, like, come on, like good, but not that good. And it did humble me a little bit. And, I think that's one thing that you have to learn as a recruiter. And the quicker you learn it, the better is, you can be brought down to earth pretty quickly. And it didn't quite happen to me, but could easily have. And, I've seen plenty of recruiters go from like close to 1 million years to doing nothing the year after, and then hopping around a few companies and living off the glory days. So, fortunately it didn't happen, but going back to what you said, I think traditional recruitment companies are like, all right, well, look, this guy's good. Let's give him a ton of resources and he can, he can turn them into, even 50% of what he's doing. So I was spending 70-80% of my time helping other people, dealing with questions, training, managing, etc. So at a time, 8 to 10 people I was responsible for. And then it was like, hey, where's the deals? And I think that year I dropped off to somewhere close. I think I finished short of 450. So a pretty big drop off. And it cost me money. So I made less that year, which I think is, it's frustrating. Obviously you get an advance in base and, that override carrot is there, but I think you've got to be quite strategic about when you're hiring, team sizes, etc. In my mind, look, if you're a biller running 10 people is hard, it's really, really hard. If you're a biller running 3 or 4 people who are, know what they're doing and haven't all been brought on at once, I think you'll be all right. Whether you'll do what you were doing in your glory days, who knows, potentially depending on your relationships. But I think, and this is not just what Elliot Brown did, I've seen it a lot of times, is, you jump onto someone who is very special and very good at what you do and you want to replicate that, right? You're like, all right, they're exactly who we want. Let's give them a ton of people. And if they create 3 or 4 of them, we win. But you get to a point where, you lose that person because they don't, you're pulling them away from what they do really well, which is bringing business and then, create that positive energy, etc. If you pull all the life out of them, it changes them completely. So that was a huge learning. And I'll be honest, it was one of the reasons it contributed to my move to Stott and May in 2017. And, I just wanted to get back to doing recruitment again. After a year of being pulled in 50 directions, making 50 cold calls sounded all right, to be honest. And, getting back on tools, which is kind of what contributed to my move in 2017, and was, really fortunate enough that, since then, I've been kind of given that, I've used that experience to learn into, went on, did $500,000 in my first year at Stott and May. Last year was kind of moving into a managerial role where I picked up, one person into my team and did extremely close to $1 million last year, just short. And then, what I'm doing is I'm being phased into a role where, I can have 3 or 4 really good direct reports and then have an advisory oversight globally on the security practice, but be allowed to do what I do. And I think that's something that we've managed a lot better here. And I've been very vocal about is, don't take me away from the tools. And, if I'm going to be bringing people in, let me spend a little bit of time with one person rather than giving me 6 people who have no idea what to do, which is,
you've gone on a big learning curve throughout this whole experience. And the thing is that obviously doing rhetoric, I speak to and see so many recruiters that have progressed through the ranks as a consultant and, then been thrown in potentially the deep end of having to manage too much, maybe more than they can handle, which affects the billings. I mean, look, I've had that with people that have worked for me, right? And ultimately it's, for you, you've clearly learned the hard way, but then look at where you are now. You know exactly how to get around that, how you want it to be, and how it's going to work for you, where you know where it's not going to work for you. So that's really valuable, like, compared to other people that have not even got to that yet.
Yeah, I've been fortunate, and I think, sometimes you have to get it wrong to get it right. And I look back and I got it wrong, but now in a situation where I think, look, I'm fortunate. My CEO appreciates my voice, and when I tell him to slow down, I think he appreciates that. I also think there's this glorified mindset of, we need to hire 20 people, we need to scale, we need to build. I would much rather have a team of 10 400K billers than 15 to 20 people doing 200, 250, a few people blanking. But there is this kind of whole mindset. And look, I get it. Businesses want to sell, businesses want to add their valuation. The more heads you have, the more valuable you seem externally. But I think, and this is something, look, you must see this every day, but people come to the US and just put the hammer down in terms of hiring, in terms of building. And I see so many people going through like phase 1 growth, then they learn a bit, get it wrong, phase 2 growth, then phase 3 growth. And that's when they tend to do it the right way. People coming out here, the one thing I would advise is just be sensible with your growth plans.
Yeah. I was actually part of a webinar yesterday with about 15, 20 business owners, and they were talking about their ambition to set up in the US. And the one bit of advice I gave them is literally what you just said, is if you go out there, a lot of businesses, they try and run before they can walk. They get too ahead of themselves. They see the big money, and they try and do too much too quickly. And there's firms, unfortunately, that are even out in the States now that I'm seeing that with. And you can identify that because I'm getting calls right, left and center by their staff that are telling me everything. And it's like, you can kind of see the pattern. And now you've been doing the US market for so long, you kind of learn more and more about it all. But tell me, so, now you are where you are, you seem to be doing incredibly well. What's the, you said at the beginning, the market in the, US, when we spoke at the minute, for you especially, has not been as hit as much. But how have you dealt with the management? How have the people under you dealt with all of this? Are they as busy as you might be, or?
So yes, we've been pretty fortunate from a security perspective. I will say we had a guy join us from the UK in March, and he had 3 days. He had 3 days in the office. So, I think, look, the thing for me is, he's probably had it the toughest because he hasn't had that chance. The first thing that I would say when you come out and get here is meet as many people as you can. And he's probably missed out on that. But as a whole, look, I've been excited by the team's effort. I have a girl who works for me who has actually just put together her best quarter. Not just from a revenue perspective, but also just like output, input, focus. And she's really taken to working remote very well. And, she's so structured and disciplined that, she hasn't taken a ton of management. And, I've had a ton of credit from like the sort of C-level here, and I can't take a ton for it. I do miss the office. I do miss the buzz. I figure we're probably going to move into, a new era of recruitment where maybe we're not 8-6, we'll have an office, but it'll be flexible, which I think is probably a model that I can get behind. Again, it's a results driven business, but, one of the guys in New York who I oversee had an exceptional March. I was fortunate enough. I had a really good April, only because I think everyone that I had in process, I think every client was like, shit, if I don't hire one of these people, they might shut my head count. So I was pretty fortunate and had a really good April. And then look, we're steady. I would say we're probably up to about 70-75% of where we were at in kind of February, March before COVID, which I'm okay with. And the one thing that we've learned, Elliot, is we're probably one of these companies that, security is such a good space that you can bring a lot of jobs on. And we're pretty good at that. almost to the point where it's like, all right, well, we've got 8 jobs. If we fill 2 this month, we're all right. Now that we're getting 4 or 5 in, we're probably doing a better job of delivery. So our metrics probably look better because we need to take care of more of the jobs that we're doing. But to your point, we're doing well. I miss the team and I miss the office, but I couldn't be prouder of the people in my team who are, you know, working remote, organizing themselves. And, you know, as we do phase to go back, I think they've kind of earned their stripes of, you know, don't need to have their hand held, don't need to hit 100 dials. Not that that's how I operate anyway, but they've really shown me they can step up when needed.
Amazing. Fine. So that leads me on to the next part. You know, what's the plans moving forward? You know, obviously you've mentioned about the whole change of working and, you know, how you guys are going to set up shop, but, you know, does that stop you from, you know, the future hiring plans? Have you pulled that back? What's happening there?
So I still think, look, we are committed to, and I'm committed to building the best cybersecurity. I know Stott and May does more than that, but personally, I'm committed to building the best cybersecurity brand in the US and globally. I think that's a title that is up for grabs. I think there's some exceptional individual contributors that, you know, work with me, but also work for other companies that I recognize and in a lot of cases like and respect. One of them lives in the same building as me. But I think I would love to hoover up as much of the really good security talent as well as curate it and have a practice of it's almost kind of its own business of 20, 30, 40 people. You know, realistically, I think our security practice by the end of 2020 will be 10 to 15 heads in the US, which will be, you know, close. So right now we're about to be 8, so double in size, 3 hires a quarter, which is reasonable growth between 2 offices. New York and LA. And look, you know, I think we'll grow as long as the numbers are there and the pipeline is there. You know, we kind of took stock and did put things on ice in April and May. I think everybody did. But we've come out better than we expected. So we're going to continue to grow. We're going to continue to hire. And for me, look, I'm super, super passionate and keen to have, you know, the best brand in cybersecurity. You know, I think we're already well liked and well recognized. But I really want to make sure that we just have, you know, are the people that everyone calls and are the brand that, you know, own the marketplace, which I think is still up for grabs. And I think we're probably at the front of the race at the minute.
Fine. Well, look, for anyone listening that does cybersecurity, obviously they know where to go now in the US, right? So, you know, if anyone's got any questions, reach out to Stuart directly at Stott and May. And if you're interested in looking, then, you know, get in touch with me and I'll introduce you to him or, you know, reach out directly. It's not a problem. But one thing you've mentioned that I really want to just sort of ask you a final question on and just sort of spread a bit of, you know, information for anyone listening. What challenge, not what challenge, just change it up. So where you've learned the hard way, right? And you've moved into this role and you've become extremely successful in that now. What advice would you give to anyone listening that's moving their way into that management role that you would tell them to try and avoid and get around kind of what you may have experienced to, you know, to better themselves?
Don't bite off more than you can chew. I know it's exciting. And look, I'll be honest, for the most part, I think you get to a certain point in your career, a lot of people want to rush to get off tools. Don't lose sight of that. You know, you'll miss it more than you know, particularly when it comes to payday. But for me, just baby steps. I know it's really exciting, particularly when you bring someone in, you start to see them do well. There is probably not many better feelings than that as a recruitment leader than, you know, your grad or your new hire coming in and doing a great job. But just take your time with it. You know, you don't need to be at the front of the pack straight away. Like I said, I would much rather have a team of 3, 4, 500K billers than have a team of 10 where I can't contribute. And to be honest, I can't give them the best either. So that would be my advice. Create, you know, be a bit distinctive about the kind of people that you want to hire and the DNA and the culture that you want to create. The first 2 hires are going to be, you know, your champions and kind of your princes and princesses if you're the king or queen. So just make sure that you hire the right person first, and then that makes your job a lot easier as well, because if you do that well, some of your responsibilities as you grow the team, you know, they'll want to get involved, or you know, hey, can you help with your pitch training, or hey, what specs are you sending? And you can outsource some of that and then empower one of your consultants. So they're probably the two key bits of advice are: take it slow and make sure that those first 2 hires you get absolutely spot on.
Fine. So definitely those two. But I think also what you mentioned earlier, the other thing about, you know, the difference of the market from working obviously in the UK to coming over to the US. I don't think recruiters necessarily understand that as much as they might be a successful recruiter in London billing £500,000 a year. Yeah. As soon as they get out to the US, they're back to square one again, and they've kind of got to readjust everything that they've learned and go again, right? And they can't go there with that sort of big head mentality that they might have in the UK, which is fine, but it doesn't work in the US, does it?
No. And the other thing that I would add to any UK recruiter is the biggest competition you'll ever face in the US is not the agency next door. It's businesses build really good talent teams. They spend a lot of money, you know, big 6-figure salaries at times for, you know, good technical recruiters. Your biggest, your biggest competition is really going to be internal talent teams. So the biggest thing I would say is make friends with them. They will help you if you get it right. And you know, I guess the traditional English way is kind of to puff your chest out and push them to one side. It won't work. So just be mindful of that when you come out here.
Amazing stuff. Amazing stuff. Listen, Stuart, mate, thank you so much for your time. I've got loads of notes here. This is really, really informative, and I'm sure that anyone listening will definitely be in touch with you, and I'll push them your way regardless. You know, but
awesome.
I know you're busy. I'll let you go, but hopefully we'll be in touch and we'll speak soon.
Nice one, Elliot. Absolute pleasure.
No worries. Take care. See you later.
Cheers, mate.